Well, it was plenty warm to end October here. We talk about it all on our October weather roundup of the Something in the Air podcast. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci at the Press of Atlantic City. Make sure to download and subscribe to our channel for the latest monthly weather updates here as we review the month of October that was with New Jersey State Climatologist Dr. Dave Robinson. We talk about that summary into October, temperatures as a whole throughout the month. We then go into rainfall or lack thereof in October, some fall foliage updates, and then how snow has been acting across the northern hemisphere. So without further ado, here we go, the October Weather Roundup, Something Air Podcast. And here to talk to us all about the October that was, New Jersey State Climatologist Dave Robinson, my birthday buddy, my weather dad here. Dr. Robinson, is November 1st. We're recording this. My question to you, did you dress up for Halloween?
No, I did not. I was coming in from out of town. So I saw Cinderella at Newark Airport.
That's nice.
And several other people dressed up at various locations, but nope. I was just in my normal climatologic garb.
Right. I should dress up as a climatologist one year. I can just have a lot of calendars all over me. Does that?
You can look like a nerd too, you know.
I think I could pull it off. I think I can pull it off.
Yeah.
All right. So these are our topics. We're going to start off with the summary end to October. Man, it was awesome out there. I at least liked it. Some people did not, but we did have a very warm end to the month. We had October 26th, 7th, and 8th that broke or tied record highs at Atlantic City International Airport. As I excitedly texted you on Saturday morning, the 3 days in the 80s was the latest 3-day streak in the 80s at ACY history. We broke some records in Millville as well. Actually, at Atlantic City, we did not break any records, but it was still pretty warm. And that Saturday, I mean, it looked like a June weekday at the beach. Like, you know, it was that kind of level of crowds there. And we got a couple pictures of people carving pumpkins on the sand in their bathing suits. So who needs Florida when you have South Jersey, right?
I love it. You also missed the fact that 30th at the airport tied a record too. So
got up to 81.
That got to 80. And that's
I did miss. Okay.
On our side of record. So yeah, 3 ties and 1 record. But you know, the 28th was the only warm day when the warm air got down to the coast, got down to the beach. And there the marina hit 81. A very impressive number. Don't get me wrong.
Impressive.
The record for that day was a very impressive 85 in 1919. Well above record warmth in the last week of October. That was just one real exceptional day back over a century ago. But
I want to stop you there real quick because I was explaining this to people too. Like, even though Saturday, it's a kind of a hard communication thing to explain. Even though Saturday was the warmest day, we probably weren't going to break that record. But how, like, I don't even know if you can answer this, but I'm just going to ask the question. Like, that 85 was so much above the surrounding days. How often do we see something like that?
I think you more often see that than the long streak that we had of multiple days in a row. It's hard to sustain that kind of abnormal warmth for days at a time. Normally it's a spike. Usually it's been warm and a frontal system's coming in, and that draws real warm air up from the south that as that front approaches. And that's often when you spike your warmest temperature. But to do it 3 days in a row or 4 out of 5 days at the airport's impressive. The other thing, let me add, it may not look impressive for the marina, but remember, records go back to 1870 some there.
Yeah, 74.
And records only go back to the 50s at the airport.
Yeah, and that actually, just to go back on that record for that Monday, you are correct that we did break the record or tied a record that day. However, if you use the longer period of record in that AC airport area, that goes back to 43. and therefore the record high was 81 in 1946. So I get, I don't know, it's a record. It is a record, but I guess if you try to push those observations at the airport back to its, I don't know, to the 40s, and it doesn't. It's a little. We
Well,
won't get too in the weeds. We're already boring people.
well, no, but that's what people have to ask themselves when they hear the record or the warmest ever or something like that. You have to, the next question you have to ask is what period of record are we talking about?
Yeah.
To put it into some kind of perspective of how unusual it might be. I mean, if you just opened your station this year, every day is a record.
Yes, that is true. You're right. You're just setting. You're getting gold medals every day
Yeah, but
of
for
the.
high and low.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. We didn't actually break any record warm low temperatures with this stretch. Some days actually cooled down, pretty nicely in the morning. By the time we got to morning, and then it shot back up.
Yeah.
But this was all due to a ridge of high pressure that we had in the deep south. We had a surface high pressure that kept bringing in southwesterly winds. It was just a warm setup for us, here. Anything else you want to add on this warmth
And the
before
other
we kind of
part
zoom
is
out?
why
Yeah,
we
go ahead.
didn't set those warm nights is we were so dry, which we'll get to.
Yes.
And that lets the dry ground helps the heat of the day escape back into the atmosphere and out into space. So
Sure.
if we had been wetter, we might have had more cloudy nights, more moist atmosphere, and we would have been warmer at night.
Good
But
point.
instead, we have the large diurnal range because the air was mostly dry and the
Yeah.
ground certainly was dry.
Yeah. There was something to it looking at these photos of people on the beach, and the shadows are just so long because the sun was so low. Like it felt like summer, you were out there, but just you look at the photos, it still feels like something's a little off. That's what it looked like to me when I'm looking at all these photos of the beach, people at the beach over the weekend and into last week.
We had that 3 years ago, in early November. We had
Yes.
a streak of warm weather, and I remember the first weekend of the month, it was over 80 degrees. Even more exceptional warmth compared to this year was that streak back in 80. And I remember people were trying to get out because we were in the midst of COVID. And people were out and about, and the leaves were off the trees, and they're in shorts and sandals. And yeah, it had an odd feel to it. Plus, I think that was probably the weekend of daylight savings time.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
So even there, you're thrown off
Right.
by the light. So yeah, we've had some exceptional warm periods. It's not as if we never did in the past. I want to make that clear. But overall, we're in that warming pattern where these things are more likely to happen. Doesn't mean they're going to happen, but they're more likely to happen than in decades past.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's true not only for the temperatures in October, but all throughout the year as we keep talking to you every month about, more times we're being above the average, and the average keeps going up too. And that's a whole nother story. But let's just zoom out to the month of October as a whole. It was the way I kind of saw this was a little bit like a sandwich. Like the beginning was on the warmer side, then we had like a below average middle, and then we had a really above average end, with the exception of Halloween itself. Is that how you saw it? And then where did we end up for the month as a whole, temperature wise?
Yeah, I already have my title for the report we published on the state climate website. I try to never repeat myself, which is a challenge I get from my assistant state climatologist, Matt Gerblish.
And you've done a lot of these.
You never do. I've done them for 2 decades. This month's going to be tranquility, because it was just so quiet in many respects. But we did end up on the warm side. Statewide, a preliminary number. We're gonna wait to see more numbers come in through the National Center. It tied for the 10th warmest October on record, and that goes back to 1895. Let me add, as I was saying earlier, to ask about the period of record. And what I saw out of the airport, going back into the 50s, it was the 10th warmest. At the marina, the 15th. Again, you had 100 years, well, 80 years more record there. But so you can see unusual at both. But that, as you said, it's so commonplace in this day and age to be in the top 25% almost every month. And the top 10, not all that out of the ordinary. And we're talking about 128 years here. So again, we were warm. A lot of the state has not had its first freeze yet. We're taping on November 1st. Tomorrow morning, we'll be saying something different.
Right.
But so thus far, of our weather network stations, and we have 67 around the state, 15 have fallen between 28 and 32. But that includes Woodbine Airport and Vine, our station in Vineland.
Yeah.
So it's not all just confined to the north. But the majority, over 3/4 of our network, has yet to see a freezing temperature. And here we are in November. We saw that, what was it, about 5 years ago? We didn't have the first statewide freeze until about the 2nd or 3rd of November. But there, no one had a freeze yet.
Wow. So it came all at once at
Yeah.
that point. Yeah. And then in terms of climatology for first freeze, assuming most of the state is going to get it on the 2nd here, where does that fit into climatological averages?
It's late. It's as much as 2 to 3 weeks late in a few areas. Up in New Brunswick, it should be before the 20th of the month. So you could say 2 weeks late.
Right.
A place like the Marina, we know it can, the average is into November. So it might even be a little early if the Marina gets to freezing.
Yeah. And I'm going to say probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if we got down there, but probably not. There could be some frost if it goes calm on the 2nd. We'll have to stay tuned. We'll have to talk about this in our November update.
Yeah. I mean, it's North America. When you look globally, North America has been the coldest area on the globe for the last couple of days. It came into the northern plains with some cold air, and it's made its way east. But as usual, the rest of the world is cooking. But when you look at anomalies compared to normal, North America has been the outlier the last week or so in terms of being abnormally cold.
Very interesting. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit more about North America at the end when we get a little hint into winter here. Just with the temperatures, we'll wrap it on up on this segment. We got about 2 more minutes left here. Looking across the area, obviously we set those records at the end of the month. We actually had our first 80 of the month on the 26th at AC International here. We did get a little cool in the middle, like I said, but nothing overly cool. It was just kind of fall-like weather here. Let me ask you this. I wanted to, and you were talking about this a couple minutes ago. Could you remember off the top of your head the last time we were in like the coldest 25% of record for a month? Because you said, how often we're in this top 25% of being the warmest, but what about the coldest?
That's a great question. We've gotten into the top 25% a few times. I'd have to look into that, but I can tell you we have not had one of the 5 coldest months of the year of a month. The 5 coldest Novembers, Decembers statewide. The last time we had one month fall into the top 5 for cold was December of 1989. And since that time, we've had almost 50 fall into the top 5 for warmth. To me, I'll retire with that being the most astounding record I've probably ever seen in terms of climate records in New Jersey. Wow. That's astounding. And absolutely rubber stamps the fact that we are getting warmer and we continue to get warm.
Sure. I wasn't even alive yet in 1989.
I wasn't a state climatologist yet.
See, there we go. We have something in common. Welcome back, everybody, to the Something in the Air podcast from the Press of Atlantic City and our friends at Stockton University. I'm meteorologist Joe Martucci. Join with me, Dr. Dave Robinson, New Jersey State Climatologist. And you were hinting at this in the first half, but when we talk about rain or the lack thereof, it was pretty darn dry in the month of October. And this goes back to just taking a zoom out, like, thank God we got all that rain in late September, right? Because we'd be in some serious trouble.
Yeah, well, we'd be a little more concerned, and we might be in more trouble if thinking of late season fire danger and such. For the most part, the farmers, whatever's happened has happened, and they like to be able to get out in their fields and harvest. So it was great, unless they were harvesting on weekends when it seemed to want to
Right. Then that's another
when it
story.
seemed to
Yes.
want to rain. And for agritourism, and we might think about that. It wasn't the greatest October. They're probably hurt more than anyone because it seemed like at least one day of the weekend was kind of a washout.
Yeah.
Those other days were brilliant in some cases, and people got out to the mazes and to pick their pumpkins and such. But that was probably the major weather-related economic concern of the month in
Yep.
this, because otherwise dry. And we were fortunate that July, August, and September were all on the wet side, so we could afford a dry month.
Got it. So just take us through the numbers here. Where were we, going back to history for the area?
Yeah. For the state, the very preliminary number is 18th out of 128. So dry, but not the driest, and that stands for South Jersey. For we'll start with the Marina, 27th driest at 1.46 inches of rain. Now you have to realize 1.46 inches is 2.79 below normal. So well under half of normal. And at the airport, 1.60 inches was 2.5 below, and the 12th driest, remember, a much shorter period of record. So when you're 25% of normal rainfall, you're dry, and parts of Southwest Jersey were well under that even. And as such, they're going to be sliding into abnormally dry conditions on the National Drought Monitor when it comes out tomorrow morning. So, there's a little concern, more in the short-term stream flow. This is the time of year we like to see the reservoirs and the groundwater starting to get replenished. We've got plenty of time to go before the next growing season starts.
Yes.
So no great worries because we're in good shape water-wise for the most part. But on the short term, a little bit of concern.
Yeah. Just kind of looking at, going through the month, our biggest rain, at least down here, was on the 14th of October. And then we also had another decent rain on the 20th there. That was pretty much it, though. I mean, other than that, if it rained, it was just fairly brief. And that was all. So, yeah, it was one of those, and you said it with the weekend, having some kind of wet weather or windy conditions, I should say, too. But not great during, people always tell me here at the shore during the summer, it's okay if it rains on the weekend because people are coming anyway, but we want it dry during the week so people can, people who wouldn't be motivated to come would come. But as soon as we get past Labor Day, it switches. You want the dry weekends during the week, doesn't matter because, it's people aren't coming at that point. And to be fair, down in this, like Atlantic, Cape May, it wasn't all that wet every weekend. I know it's a different story, Monmouth, and then obviously in the northern part of the state. And then the past weekend we just had, maybe it made up for the past 5 weekends, just how warm and bright it was both Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah. I'd be remiss if I didn't give us our CocoRoss totals by county. I know
Yeah.
some of the listeners must be waiting with bated breath every month to hear those totals.
Well, we have a CocoRoss story coming out soon. Stay tuned.
Yeah, that's great. Fabulous. Atlantic County, the wettest spot. And this is a couple dozen people reporting in 2.07 inches in Galloway. That was the wettest spot of Atlantic County. And Buena Vista takes low honors with 0.89 inches. And remember, we should be somewhere between 3.5 and 4 inches for the month. Cape May, 2.34 at Wildwood Crest for a high, and over in Middle Township, 1.24. So very nearby, and a difference of a little over an inch, but still all dry. And up north, I'll start with Stafford Township, closer to Atlantic County. 1.42 inches was the low.
Mm,
When you go north, the northern ocean coast up into the
yeah.
eastern Monmouth County was one of the wettest parts of the state for the month, 4.73 inches in Brick. So if you wanted to find a place where precip was a little above normal in October, go to eastern Monmouth County, Hudson, parts of Essex, Bergen, parts of Passaic. It was that northeast corner. One particular event, not the super event that we had in late September, because that was also a northeast corner of the state event. But that kind of burgeoning nor'easter that where pressures plummeted to the lowest values we've seen since last winter. And I'm not even so sure we hit 2,900 on the barometer last winter.
Wow.
That just caught the eastern part of the state, just like those remnants of what was it, Ophelia,
Yeah,
uh,
Ophelia. Yep.
did late in September.
Yep.
So they've had the plenty, but
Right.
that's not where the reservoirs are. That's not where the wells generally are. But again, we're okay for now. We're
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Good. Speaking of okay, how about full foliage? We've man, it really feels spotty to me. I've been in a couple places in the state recently, and some look good, some look eh. Some hasn't changed yet. I was actually at Stockton on October 30th, and it was pretty green in Galloway. So, when we always do an annual full foliage report here at the press. We do it with the State Forest Service. We were looking to be really vibrant, but we would probably be on the late side. We had an update to that, said things were still going pretty good. I don't know if like it's been too dry. I don't know if that has something to do with it. It hasn't popped yet, but there's still some areas where it still isn't even really fully changing over yet.
Yeah, I guess we're on a roll here saying okay. And I guess that would apply to the foliage. And I've talked to some people, both in Jersey and down in Delaware and all, and it was like, yeah, it was okay. It wasn't, some say it wasn't as vibrant as last fall. I think what hurt it was we stayed mild and we didn't get the cool nights until we got well into October. The dry conditions probably didn't help. Um, a few windy days as we got towards the end of the month. When we had that heaviest rain, it was followed by some high pressure. So the winds were pretty strong in that gradient between them, and that didn't help. Um, yeah, okay. It wasn't a loss,
Yeah.
but I think most would say they've seen better fall foliage.
Yeah. And like I said, still some places. You come down to Cape May, it's still pretty green. So we got a little bit of time to go. So if you're still looking for some good foliage, or at least just trying to see the leaves change, still further south you go, the better it will be. All right. So I'm gonna flip gears a little bit. I know you're not a forecaster, right? But you are the king. What are you? The snow king, self-described snow king.
Oh, sure.
I'm describing you as a snow king, not self-described. But you are the operator of the Rutgers Global Snow Lab. And the reason why I say that is because that actually, might have some influence on what to expect this winter. We're actually speaking with your friend and former advisory, Judah Cohen. He will be on our special edition of the Something in the Air podcast next week to talk about the winter outlook here. And, he has in recent years used snowfall data in October to kind of parlay what to expect over the winter. So I'm just kind of giving an open-ended question. How are we looking on snow across the northern hemisphere? And then we have an El Nino developing. Could you give us any thoughts on how you're feeling this winter here in New Jersey?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Looking at northern hemisphere, we haven't seen October numbers yet. We'll have those in a couple of days. It was generally a slow start to snow cover over Siberia, parts of North America, but over North America and Western Eurasia, it really picked up in the last week of the month. And it'll be very interesting to ask Dr. Cohen
Yes.
if because he used to look at our snow cover data and for the average for the month of October, but then he found it was better to track the rate of change of the snow cover. And the rate was pretty impressive the last 2 weeks of the month. So that would be perhaps indicative of, or at least play into his forecast. So it's a tough call. But right now, there was that cold outbreak over North America. We're the coldest part of the globe relative to normal. North America was over the last week. And with that came snow. And of course, with the snow comes the cold. So a snowstorm came into the northern plains, and it dropped upwards of a foot of snow in some places in Montana and Dakotas. And even out into the Front Range of Colorado, they got a second shot with about a half foot, and their temperatures fell below zero or down into the single digits in response to that fresh blanket of snow on the ground. So they feed off of each other. But first, you got to get it cold enough, bring in the moisture, and get it to snow. And then it can start snowballing. And what
goes, you did there.
Yeah, that was, snow humor, very, very weak. So, if we can establish that snow cover, then the cold air coming out of Canada will be refrigerated as it makes its way down here during the winter. But it remains to be seen, because there are actually parts of the Yukon and up in the other parts of northwestern Canada that don't have snow cover right now. It's to the south, but not up there. So again, we'll have to wait and see, but a big change in the last week in terms of continental snow cover over the northern hemisphere.
Gotcha. All right, good to know. Well, we got 2 more minutes left. We can open it up, see what's new and exciting over at the Climate Office. And if you want to talk a little bit about CocoRoss, our volunteer observer network that we have across the country, that'd be great too.
No, our CocoRoss network, which you've helped promote multiple times and brought in some of the listeners, no doubt, into the program, is this large citizen science program where you're trained with online videos and text and whatever to take daily observations of precipitation, be it rain or snow or hail. CocoRoss stands for the Community Collaborative Rain, Hail, and Snow Network. Just call it CocoRoss. And with that, you contribute to the community, to your state. Actually, nationally, your data gets archived. Once you've been an observer for, I can't remember how many, couple hundred days or something like that, your data qualify to be entered into the National Climate Database, the historic records. So that's kind of neat too. And you're really helping folks like myself out when we look at drought. You hear the numbers whenever we meet. You help us fill a little time each month with the podcast. And it's just a neat program. And I'm so grateful to about 300 active observers in New Jersey. But 300 is never enough. I was just looking yesterday because I had been out in Minnesota, granted a larger state, but not as many people. And they have over 600 active observers out there. So that's the challenge I give your listeners and your readers. And
we need another 300 people. That's what he's saying. We need another 300 people by the time the first flake of snow starts.
Well, this is a tough time to sign people up because it becomes a little more challenging in the winter. You're going outside, it's cold. You have to worry about your gauge for water freezing after rain. And you have to be careful if you're not agile on your feet. Some people shut down for the winter because understandably afraid of any ice or snow. Some people are in total denial. They don't want to see snow. So they shut it down. But it's a wonderful program. And we're so grateful for the citizen science volunteers. We have observers from kids to people, octogenarians, taking observations for us. So thanks for giving us the opportunity to talk about it and for promoting it so often as you do.
Absolutely. Happy to do it. All right. We are going to wrap for this month of the Something in the Air podcast. Remember, we have a special episode, a winter forecast episode coming up with Dr. Judah Cohen right around Election Day. I'm not sure exactly what day yet, but right around there. Stay tuned.